How's the community in Classic toward brand new players? Varied. You will find some people who have been doing nothing but playing this game for the last 20 years, and they have opinions. They will both be incredibly excited that you are able to experience the game as a new player, and also incredibly annoyed that you don't know what to do as an established player. They will say, oh, I wish I could go back and play the game for the first time, but also, why aren't you playing the game like I've been playing the game for the last 20 years? And I'm like, what do you want? Do you want someone to make cute noob mistakes and allow them to explore stuff, or do you want them to be perfect? That's the kind of weird dichotomy. The Classic community seem to love the fact that new people are joining them, but hate the fact that new people are acting like new people. So what we've done is we've created the guild, the union, which is very much just about accepting and teaching and chatting to people and not worrying too much about being meta or being perfect. Because everything beyond that, it's just too much. Experience the game again. Chill. This is like a dad guild. That's the best way to explain it. Doesn't mean you need to be a dad. It means that the vibes of this guild are very much dad-based. As in, we're not worried too much about being perfect. We've all got lives. We've all got jobs. This is going to be no one's most important thing ever. I think what it is when people look at the leveling of a WoW character, they treat it as if that character is already an endgame raider. So they say, oh, if you leveled from 3 to 4, you absolutely must choose this upgrade. You must choose this. You must choose the other. I'm like, look, man, at this point, it just doesn't matter. Is there a requirement? Yeah, just don't be a dick. Love your perspective of the game, taking it slow and the adventure-based. Change your gameplay completely. Good. You can't decide your main. Neither can I. Neither can I, bro. Just play what you find fun. As a dad, pitch your WoW Classic like an elevator pitch. Why should I invest? The interest is there. You shouldn't. You should go and do anything else with your time. If you're a dad, you've got limited time. You don't want to be sat in front of a computer several hours a day playing an MMORPG grinding for drops. There you go. I'll give you reasons not to play it. I don't need to pitch the game to you, man. It's a slow-paced MMORPG with a narrative story, interesting dungeons, very chilled-out gameplay. And no matter what anyone says to you with the whole kind of like, oh, you know, it's super difficult, super complicated. No, it's not. Not at all. It's actually remarkably easy. I'm sure that the ultra-hardcore endgame stuff is a bit more complicated, but remember that World of Warcraft was designed so that the EverQuest players would look at it and say, oh my god, well, that is so casual. It is casual. There are not that many choices to be made at any given moment in the game. Compared to the complexity of MMORPGs and games that we have access to nowadays, it's very simple and very slow. Go and kill any of the bosses in Elden Ring DLC, then go back and play Dark Souls 1. Then realize how bloody slow the bosses that you were killing were. Realize how easy it is when you are used to super fast, super overwhelming, super difficult fights. That's the best way to look into it. Go and play any modern, fast, complicated, difficult game. Then return to WoW Classic and realize, actually, this is quite easy. Dark Souls 1, and this is the important thing, Dark Souls 1 is not an easy game. It is difficult. The game didn't get easier. You got better. When people say to me, oh, Dark Souls 1's so easy. No, it's not. You're good. There's a difference. If you've never played any From Software game, any kind of Souls-like, Dark Souls 1 is hard. If you have played many Souls-likes, you will be able to finish Dark Souls 1 easily, because you will be good at it. That's the best way I can describe this. World of Warcraft Classic is a game that, taking into account the fact that we now have so much modern gaming knowledge, is much, much easier than people think it is. Yeah, Beth, I would say people should start with trying Dark Souls 1 or even Dark Souls 3. You want to understand what makes it fun. What makes it fun for me is the pacing. I understand every role that every class has in every encounter. Every battle in Warcraft Classic is a puzzle. Solving the puzzle is done through the correct application of your skills, your abilities, understanding of your place within the team, your place within the process. And there is a satisfaction to knowing that you have performed your duty correctly. It's also not too complicated. I can read Twitch chat while also playing. There's lots of variety. There's a huge amount of choice. Most of them are correct. You were talking about the retail one-button mechanic, not classic. Okay, gotcha. Because people want to do it. Why are people playing the one-button mechanic in retail? Because that's what they wanted to do. Retail has been making many choices, which has been trying to make itself more available to the casual player. Whether that is the right or the wrong choice remains to be seen. People that want to use the one-button rotation, people that don't want to use the one-button rotation, will say the one-button rotation is ruining everyone else. If you have the one-button rotation, as in you just press one button and do lots of different things, it is removing a level of complexity and, in some way, a level of skill from it. Sinriz says, most stupid take ever. Sir, this take hasn't finished yet. Do you want to keep asking me questions? Do you want to keep talking about this? Because I hadn't finished talking. The problem is that I can't give you an answer in a sound bite. Do you want the full answer, or do you want a sound bite? Because the full answer would be, if Retail WoW continues to add in systems that increase accessibility and player engagement at the cost of player skill, then you are going to increase engagement, but you're going to devalue the skill that each player has, which means that someone that has spent time and energy and effort into learning their rotation and is thus rewarded with a higher DPS because they have mastered their rotation, is now being told that other people should be given the same benefit in the game that they have without the same amount of input or learning or understanding, saying that every player should be on the same level that they are without having to have the same understanding. That's what it's getting to. Which means that you're going to get a player base that are happy that they can perform at the level of a higher player at the cost of the higher player feeling that their effort and input has been devalued. But you then have to ask from a business point of view, what's more valuable? Having a few high-level players who feel that they are rewarded because of their complex gameplay and game interaction knowledge, or having many players who feel accomplished they can do the same thing with one button? Now, what you might also find is that if you have many people who feel accomplished they can do the same thing with one button, what you're going to get in the short term is people thinking, oh my god, I'm the same as a high-level player. But in the long term, you're then going to get people who realize that they're not actually doing anything different. That's the complexity of it. People don't need to learn what they're doing. They press one button and they do it, but they don't understand the why. But correct me if I'm wrong on this, doesn't the one-button rotation also have a slightly slower application than actually just pressing the buttons? Is that correct as well? Which means that the people that do have the skill to press all of the correct buttons in the right time will still have a higher DPS. It's also not an optimal rotation, so it is slightly weaker than everything else. Okay, cool. From what I'm also gathering, a lot of the super high-level skilled people use a hell of a lot of add-ons and mods and downloads and macros that reduce a huge amount of the input that they have to do anyway, because they're trying to simplify it for themselves. So when people jump in and go, that's a stupid take, I think what you normally mean is, I've not given you a sound bite that you agree with. That way people couldn't just use one button and do the most damage. Yeah. Baron, that's a great way of putting it. You hate the idea, but actually you love having the ability to just play brainlessly now. Lots of people will find that as well. Lots of people will say, oh my god, this devalues it, but more people will just play the game and do it. Terra used to have a one-button rotation, and everyone seems to absolutely love the combat system from Terra. Everyone keeps saying how good it was. I think that I can understand the point of view. Established players who have put effort and time and energy into doing something dislike whenever any decision or update is made that devalues the effort and the time they've put into something. And you know what? To a degree, they are right. It is super annoying to be told, hey, that thing you've learned to do, we're going to make it easier for everyone else to do. But sometimes you have to step back and say, okay, am I annoyed because I think this is making the game worse, or am I annoyed because it's personally gone against something I've had to do? Because I have a very specific memory of this. I got 99 prayer in RuneScape years ago, and I did it by using Dragon Bones on a home altar. But back then, you had to right-click every bone, and then click Use, and then click on the altar. So I right-clicked Use thousands of Dragon Bones. The day I got 99, the very day my prayer level hit 99, they released an update that allowed you to use all bones on an altar. I got the cape, I read the patch notes, and at the bottom it said, you can now click the altar and click use all bones. The same day that I put the prayer cape on. And my first response was, oh my god, this is an awful update. I had to suffer, therefore you should too. And then I thought, hang on, I haven't suffered. I've just proved that I can right-click and left-click 1,000 times. People who play RuneScape are going to do that way more than that anyway. This isn't gameplay that it's been adding. This is literally just tedious, monotonous work that's going to cause RSI. So it's totally okay that at this point I can just do that. Mukbully Moo, you sound like a manual car enjoyer shit-talking automatic drivers. Bully Moo, do you really think that? Okay, let me just ask a genuine question to chat. Do you guys think that I'm talking down to people that enjoy the one-button rotation? Have I actually said anything or done anything that's made people that enjoy this system feel bad or called out? I'm literally trying to explain the complexities of how people see certain situations and how they see other situations. I said I get it. I understand that if you want to use the one-button rotation because either you have a disability that this makes playing the game far easier, or you just don't want to pay too much attention to the game while you play it, okay, sweet, I get that, you know, I see where you're coming from. But at the same time, if you see the one-button rotation as devaluing the skill that you have because it's bringing people up to your level when you think the only reason they should be on your level is if they've also worked hard for it, then I get why that would annoy you. When games bring out updates that change the way the game is played, you have to ask yourself, is this beneficial for the longevity of the game? Is being able to enjoy an MMORPG by only interacting within a combat situation with one button, is that a bad thing? Knowing that that is effectively going to be something that you need to build off. That's the foundation. What they're doing with this is they're changing the foundation. They're saying, hey, the foundational level of skill is now here. I also think people need to realize that not that many people actually push super high level content. If you are upset that other people are able to do what you do with a 25% debuff by only pushing one button, I understand why that's upsetting. But on the other side of the coin, you have to then say, if what you were doing was simply pressing buttons in a specific order faster, can you learn to continue to do that? Understanding of situations, situational awareness, understanding of boss mechanics, understanding of how mechanics combine with each other within what you've got equipped, order that you use things in, the stacking of buffs, all of this is game knowledge that is just as valuable. Why would that be upsetting? If you care so much about what other people are doing, you have a much greater issue. Some people get their validation from playing the game. Like, if I spent absolutely ages learning how to play the warrior, and then someone comes along and says, hey, we've released an update so people don't need to learn that anymore, they can now just press all these buttons and do as well as you do. Part of me is going to be instantly annoyed. Because I'm going to be sat there thinking, oh, that's bloody irritating, because you've straight away annoyed me. Isn't there meant to be a dwarf here somewhere? Because that's going to be like, oh man, all my time, it's wasted. But at the same time, I then have to sit back and think, hang on, was I getting my personal validation from this? Was I getting a level of internal validation? That guy was just baiting a reaction to show to their favorite cult streamer. Sen, people always come in and go, oh, you got one guide, you're baiting a reaction, you got one guide. It is possible for me to just pick up information in the stream and talk to people about that. That's just how streaming is. Because otherwise I have to admit and act that the entire stream is just a monolith and nobody deserves any individual attention. Which I think is just really sad. People only ever think it's you got one guide when someone says something dumb. Along with the one-button rotation, Retail introduced a rotational helper. There's a path toward improvement if players are willing to take it. Cool. Sounds great. Does it matter in a PvE scenario when there's no competition between users? Especially true. In a PvE scenario, not really. Inside you are two buttons. One of them is just being pressed a lot. I have known people who get genuinely personally upset when an update to a game changes how that game plays, because that game is a major part of their life. And this is a really complicated conversation, because we can't keep saying that video games are the most popular form of entertainment and yet then get surprised when people who are hyper invested in them get upset when they change. Video games become people's lives. I don't think that's healthy, but they do. So we need to simply accept that they do. That's going to happen. And people get super invested, they get hyper invested into them, and then they change and people get super upset. People take video games seriously, and so when those games change, it is, to them, a serious change. I think one of the worst things to happen to competitive video games in general is trying to make everything into an esport and everyone thinking that if you do not play the game hyper competitively, you are playing it wrong. That to me is super duper draining. Everyone wants to play their game as if they are playing an esport on the world stage. You are not. You are playing a game in your leisure time. In your leisure time, you are under no obligation to create value for anyone except yourself. If you find value in playing hyper-competitively, that's fine. But if you think that you need to devalue others' experience because they aren't playing hyper-competitively, you are not being a gamer. You are being a dick. Unfortunately, that's just the way it works. Just don't play ranked. If you tell someone they are having less fun or experiencing a lesser version of the game because they are not playing as competitively as you are taking way too much personal validation from the game, and you might just need to go and touch industrial amounts of grass. Why are these takes correct? It's weird hearing someone normal on the internet. Because games are meant to be games. They're meant to be fun. If they stop being fun, ask yourself why are you continuing to play them? Oh, if it's bind on pickup, then I don't think I've got it. Sorry. I get people messaging me almost daily. And the message normally goes like this. Hi Josh, I play this really weird MMORPG. Recently, the devs have done this specific update, which has changed how this system in the game works. It is bad because of a paragraph of reasons. Could you please contact the devs and tell them to change it back? Now, on one hand, I'm glad that people think that I've got that kind of power. That you say that's unhinged. You know what? It is. It is because people reach out to me to try and change how something they love works. People make video games, whatever it is, whether it's FIFA, whether it's Tekken, whether it's League of Legends, whether it's this, that, the other, their whole thing. And when that game changes, their whole thing changes. Tekken 8 has been getting some patches. Okay, which means people are going to be worried about how it changes when people step in. I watched that video about Eddie that just presses the 3 button repeatedly. That was quite fun. Yeah, if it's their main game, I can understand why they want to keep it that way. It is their main game. I don't personally understand this general vibe, but some people choose one video game and just that becomes their thing. Like, that's it. That's all they do. And hey, if that's your whole thing, that's what it is. Imagine if you had one hobby and then something comes along which changes it quite substantially. At that point, you're going to be kind of annoyed. So I get it. What if it's really bad changes like War Thunder adding inertia to its infantry to reduce camera snappiness? How did that change the gameplay mechanically? I'm not saying it didn't, I'm saying I don't understand how it did. And then Danny saying retail became a mobile game. It didn't, because it's not on mobile. Like, you can dislike the changes, but that's not happened yet. What I think is sometimes people want to critique things, but they don't understand that if they critique things by going to an extreme degree, you're actually devaluing the power of that extremity. So if someone turns around and goes, oh my god, retail is a mobile game now, it objectively isn't. It is a PC game, you can probably play it on Steam Deck, but I don't think anyone's downloading it to an iPhone yet. And if you say it's a mobile game when it isn't, what you've actually done is you've made people think that you aren't arguing from a place of objective critique, you're arguing from a place of irritated, emotional, or, passionate approach. Also, when you say it's a mobile game, there's lots of good games on mobile. I mean, let's be fair, that Kingdom Rush was pretty good, and Pokemon Go was pretty banging, and Cut the Rope, fantastic. Love that stuff. I think that it's difficult to have a discussion about critique and design with someone who is so emotionally invested within the design that they understand that any deviation from it becomes a problem. They say that a sign of intelligence is the ability to entertain a thought without committing to it. So sometimes when I say to someone, hey, let's just think about how this would go. Let's have a look at how this would change the idea. Let's think about hypotheticals. How would this look in the future? That's what we then need to do. Some people are against change, and I think there is, believe it or not, there's actually a value to understanding change. And there's a value to pushing back against it without purpose. Change without purpose, without a reason, is normally just change for someone's ego. You get managers that come into businesses that go, we're going to change how things work around here. Why? Because they don't work? Or because you want them to continue to work fine, but you want to say that you are the reason for the change? That's what it is. The reason that managers come in and decide to change things so quickly is because they want to feel responsible for the success. Middle management syndrome within changing. But of course, change can also be great. Was your ad with Pinterest and WoW real? Yeah. The way you talked in them, it was hard to tell if it was satire. No, that was just me talking to a camera making an advert. One of the reasons that it's difficult to discuss changes within games is games are a hobby. And when that hobby becomes your only hobby, because a hobby is meant to be a break from the norm, a break from the rest of life. It's meant to be a little thing that you find value in, you find joy in, you find a lovely level of satisfaction in. But when that hobby becomes your only source of joy, your only source of satisfaction, it switches from being a hobby to, at that point, it just becomes you. That's just what you do. It's just who you are. That's quite scary, because then changes to that hobby define who you are. When you build your identity around something that other people have created, you are giving a huge amount of yourself over to other people. And I think that's really dangerous. When you define your identity, your happiness, your value as a human being by being good at a system that other people make, you are placing the keys to your happiness in their hands. I've had people come up to me and go, I can't believe they're changing Warhammer again. I liked the old editions. Just keep playing them then. Part of getting older is understanding that you don't need to keep up with everything. And there is a value in just doing the things that make you happy, even if they're not the most popular thing. Newfoundland, the military. Yeah, you see it in the military quite a lot. People build their entire identity around whatever job they had, whatever responsibility they had. When your accomplishments in your hobby become what you tie to your self-worth, it's only natural that you defend your position. It is. It normally becomes more apparent with people that only ever have one hobby. Do you guys ever discover that? People that have a varied, take on life. People that have multiple things they do, multiple people they know, multiple places they go. People that have a more wide selection of input. I suppose you'd call them... What's the best way to put this? You'd probably call them artistically well-traveled. Having more than one hobby leads you to not hyperfixate on your one hobby. That is a great way of putting it. A professional in anything is still an amateur in their hobby. And by that, I mean, if someone's going to jump in and go, well, what if you're a professional in your hobby? I'm talking in generalities here. It's possible to be a professional in something and still an amateur in whatever thing you do as a hobby. If anything, it's encouraged, because then you aren't worrying too much about it. And if you are an amateur in your hobby, you just don't really care about the changes too much. It just kind of happens, And if you are an amateur in your hobby and things change within it, it doesn't affect you that much. But I guess I've met people who are a little bit too invested in whatever thing they're doing. And so small changes to it become major changes to their life. If you've only got one or two outlets, if your life sucks and you've only got one or two outlets that bring you happiness, then any changes to those outlets is going to actually be, to you, a pretty major change. So when someone says, oh, it's just a game, yeah, I get that, but at the same time, I do understand why to these people it is more than that. There are many MMORPG players who only play their MMO. And it's difficult to have a conversation with them because they'll have conversations such as, what is the best class in an MMO? And then they will chime in with whatever class they play in their game. But they don't have a full kind of broad overview of the MMO genre as a whole. So they're not arguing or discussing things from a point of great knowledge. They're discussing it from a point of passion within their game. That's why when people say to me, what's my favorite class in WoW? I don't know, because I haven't finished all of them to a degree where I understand them all yet. People say, what's the best MMO I've ever played? I don't know. I've played lots, and I've played enough to know that I've not played enough. People identify themselves by their job. People identify themselves through their hobby. People identify themselves through their position and their standing within society. And when that changes, when anything of that changes, they see it as a change within their identity. If you are, I mean, how many people here have met someone in a very small position of power? Whether it's in their job, whether it's in like a homeowners association, whether it's in a local theatre union, whether it's in a club, a board game club. How many people have met someone in a small position of power, and yet that becomes their thing? God damn, that's their whole thing. That power, that's what matters, that becomes them. Outside of that whole context, outside of work, outside the hobby, outside that very, very small power structure that most people just do not care about and will never experience, they have no more power or, no more interesting stuff than the average everyday person. But good lord, do they lean into that. And if some of you have been that before, but you recognize that and you've changed, well done. It's a bloody difficult thing to do. It's hard to, you know what, Ikara, it is hard to blame them. When that's all they've got, it is hard to blame them. If you've only got a hammer, every problem looks like a nail. If you've only got one small thing that defines you within life, then you're obviously going to go all in with that, obviously. I think it becomes, and games become this to a lot of people, it becomes a cornerstone of their life. And so changes to it are actually genuinely changes to their life. And when you make changes to someone else's life without their consent, that can feel really insulting. So that's why whenever I come along and review an MMORPG, people are like, but you haven't played it for as long as I have, therefore your opinion is irrelevant. I get why you would be insulted by me coming into your hobby, experiencing it for a briefest of times compared to you, and then saying, actually, it's important that you listen to my opinion on this. It's a defense mechanism. It is. It's a defense mechanism against being insulted.